There is a looming branding disaster on the horizon for Dungeons & Dragons.
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
You may recall that a few months ago, a creator at Wizards' much-maligned D&D Creator Summit declared that One D&D was dead. Now, this, of course, led to speculation that Wizards was dropping all those planned major revisions to 5th edition that we were seeing in Unearthed Arcana playtests over the past few months. Now, Wizards quickly assured its fans that these revisions were still on, but Wizards then followed up during a press summit the following month, one that we did not attend due to some scheduling conflicts, saying that they were dropping the One D&D branding around those planned changes. Now, Polygon, who did attend the press summit, attempted to explain what exactly was going on here. A quote from an article posted in May said that the design team never called it One D&D. They have code names, and that was Nathan Stewart, who is the VP of Marketing for D&D. You may recall Nathan as one of the faces of D&D way back in the early days of 5th edition when he was regularly making appearances and often would announce new books on a monthly Twitch show. He continues. And so from our standpoint, One D&D represented what they were doing, plus it was the things we were seeing the D&D Beyond team do for access and accessibility related to the digital and physical being more integrated. Now, according to Stewart, One D&D was supposed to be more of a rallying cry towards the physical and digital integration of D&D rather than the branding for a whole new edition. So, this kind of speaks to some of the wider problems that Wizards of the Coast has been having. Namely, that they are calling their major revisions, all the stuff that we've been seeing in Unearthed Arcana, they're calling it all 5th edition. We're not getting a new edition of the game. Instead, we're just getting new editions of the core rulebooks, which includes a ground-up rebuild of the Dungeons Master's Guide, a rework of how to build a character in the player's handbook with, backgrounds being a thing, feats being, critical to character building, and the retooling of most monsters in the Monster Manual to match some retooling that we had previously seen in the Monsters of the Multiverse book. While a lot of the core mechanics will be the same, we're basically getting a rebalanced 5th edition, a revised 5th edition, but with a flawed way of separating what came before from what we'll be getting in the future. In fact, D&D has pointed out that they'll simply be referring to the current Player's Handbook, the one that's on your shelf, as Player's Handbook, in parentheses, 2014, and next year's handbook as Player's Handbook, in parentheses, 2024. Not confusing at all.
What?
Now, on the one hand, D&D understandably sees 5th edition as a major part of their current appeal. The current edition is the most popular version of the game ever, and they don't want to risk any damage to their secondary brand recognition by promoting what's basically a new game, especially as they're hoping that the D&D movie and the upcoming TV show and other projects keep building interest in newcomers for trying out D&D for the first time. And, all those articles saying, hey, do you want to try D&D? Here's the books you need. They're simply releasing new versions of that. They're new rule books, but they're going to be titled the same. And, they're just trying to keep the good times going, I guess. On the other hand, those of us who have been following tabletop RPGs for a while, we see the parallels. We know what's going on here. We've seen this before from Dungeons & Dragons. They made a bunch of changes to 3rd edition, and they started calling it 3.5. And, there were a lot of key differences between 3rd edition and 3.5 edition, but the core chassis was still the same, and folks, they made the transition just fine. In fact, 3.5 was probably the most popular the game has ever been before 5th edition. I understand why they don't want to call all these changes 6th edition. They're trying to avoid edition wars. They don't want somebody to jump in, take the SRD for 5th edition and then turn it into, the next Pathfinder. I get that. But simply releasing revised edition of the core rulebooks and, just saying, oh no, these are the core rulebooks, and not expecting a lot of confusion, that just feels like a very unforced error. I'm almost dreading seeing the dialogue on Reddit and other tabletop RPG communities when all of this rolls out next year. Now, this isn't the only branding problem that's been coming out of D&D in recent months. D&D Beyond has overtaken the main D&D YouTube and the main webpage as the home for Dungeons & Dragons, which is fine, but it's led to a lot of confusion because, we're looking for official D&D statements on the wrong website, and we're getting them on the D&D Beyond Twitter instead of the main accounts with, Dungeons & Dragons main Twitter account simply retweeting D&D Beyond. The Twitch channels for both have basically been abandoned, save for, these occasional Twitch hangouts which someone who follows D&D but not D&D Beyond wouldn't be interested in, other than the fact that these hangouts, occasionally show off never before seen artwork and drops like little bits of news with no heads up or notice or even like references about it after the fact. It just all seems really strange. Hopefully, D&D figures out a clear and coherent direction and a purpose with the initiative formerly known as One D&D. I am not a hater of what One D&D was. I think that it was addressing some really big problems with 5th edition, and I was really glad about that. I like a lot of the changes I've been seeing in the Unearthed Arcana. I want this to be successful. I think the main issue is that there is this desire to hang on to 5e, and it seems to be holding Dungeons & Dragons back. And I think that makes this very big 2024 initiative feel almost directionless and unimportant in a way. And frankly, that feeling, that lack of excitement about what's supposed to roll out next year, because that's the other thing. We're not getting a new edition. Look what is going on with Warhammer 40K right now. They are just pumping themselves out. New 40K, yeah, new edition. Look at all the cool stuff we're doing. You're still going to be able to use your miniatures and all this other stuff, but it's new edition. Look at that and compare to what is going on with One D&D, where it's just kind of like, yeah, we got these books, they're coming out sometime. I don't know. We don't know when they're coming out. We don't even know what's going to be in them yet. Do you want to see this playtest packet eventually? Maybe. It just feels directionless, and frankly, I think that could be really bad and disastrous for the 2024 anniversary.
You hate to see it.
Anyways, what do you think about D&D's recent branding choices? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.